All right, hello, LinkedIn and YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us live. Today, we're going to talk about building an information universe to democratize data for all. This is another initiative with Qlik, the Data Brilliant Unplugged, where it's all about live engagement and conversations about remarkable transformations with data. So in today's session, you're actually going to hear from Mark Diorio from KPMG, Matt Bulmer from Qlik Professional Services, and Rob Wunderlich from, he's a Qlik Luminary Community MVP, webseed.io. So we're going to explore KPMG's Insight 360 platform, which is used internally at KPMG by more than 10,000 users across the firm. We're also going to see how it's helped to support and inform decision-making. So the platform was actually built by Mark and team. And without further ado, I'm going to start and bring Mark into the show. Hello, Mark.
Hi, glad to be here. Thank you.
Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for making it. I think before we kick things off, you mentioned that there was an interesting question that you'd like to ask the audience, and it's about really where are they coming from? Are they from IT? Are they from the business side? And why they decided to join our session? And I think that's going to really help us form the rest of the discussion. So if you're joining us live, please go ahead and let us know. Are you in technology? Are you from the business? Are you from somewhere else? It would be great to know. So, Mark, I think let's get started and just let's learn a little bit about you. Who is Mark and what do you do at KPMG?
Okay. So can you see my screen okay?
We can now, yes.
Okay. So it started in Staten Island in the 60s. We didn't have data analytics then, so you can see I look pretty confused. We did have the Beatles, we had Willie Mays, we had Mickey Mantle, we had Ralph's Ice Cream down the street, but no data analytics. So then the 70s rolled around. Still no data analytics, but we had rock and roll, so who cares? And like a lot of my generation, I sold my soul to it. But then the 80s and 90s, bills, mortgages, car payments, kids, I sold my soul to Goldman Sachs. And we had a good run there. It's really where the idea of data delivery and the power of enabling leaders hit home for me. We built something called Info Center. We didn't have Qlik then or a lot of the really powerful tools that we have today, but with a lot of energy and effort and long hours, we built Info Center, which helped Goldman achieve world market dominance. And we're very proud of what we built there. And
Mark, is that your daughter? Is that your daughter helping you build the Info Center?
Typical weekend with the kids. We didn't have work from home then. We didn't have dress down days, and so it was a good experience. My son was there too, but he's in the vending machines trying to see the quarters there.
Of course.
Okay, and then success at Goldman, I was able to buy a lake house. It's where I live now in Northern Jersey. There's one of my neighbors on the right. A little slice of heaven. And some things I like to do besides building enterprise solutions is creating decadent, fattening Italian foods for my family, or building, multi-year projects outside like the stairway. I'm still very close to music, but instead of rock and roll, which I still love, really diving into jazz, which is a lifelong study, and composition.
Is that the same piano that you have behind you now, or?
No, that's the piano I used to keep at my apartment when I was working in the city. So that's in the bedroom. And then I have a grand, actually traded up from this to a Steinway. That's in the living room. And then my most creative endeavor is trying to raise my kids. I was talking about winging it. I'm really proud of them. They haven't asked me for money in about 6 months, so that's a good sign. And my wife and I enjoying golf, which is my therapy. It's actually cheaper than therapy, and I find it more effective. Although sometimes it turns into scream therapy.
Yes.
And lastly, something I'm very proud of is to rub shoulders with the giants of Qlik. So this is the Masters Summit a few years ago. I'm still digesting some of the lessons learned. These people know more about Qlik than Qlik, and I'm glad to have one of the rock stars of the Master Summit here with us. And Rob, I don't know if you wanted to talk about that forum there.
Master Summit occurs twice a year. It's an advanced 3-day training for Qlik developers. We had to postpone this year due to the pandemic concerns, but we hope to be back in 2021 in Europe and the US.
All right, thank you, Rob. We'll bring you back soon. Okay. Thanks for popping in.
And if you mention my name, you get I get 5% cut. So. Okay, so that's really the intro, and I have some slides describing our solution.
Well, Mark, you've got a comment here from Redwan saying this is the best intro ever. So
thank you.
We've got some folks telling us where they're tuning in. Okay, so we've got Mohammed from Technology Digital Transformation, Scott Taylor from the business, and he never misses an episode. That's great. We've got Mark Kaplan here, insurance business and looking for the right data technology partner for his project. We have a couple more that's joined, but you were, somebody said great hat, Rob. So when you come back, I'm not sure, it says LinkedIn user. I guess they have their accounts are private, but you're already getting hat compliments. I heard Rob is famous for his hat, so we're going to talk about that when he joins the session again. Right now, I think it makes sense for us to go ahead and introduce the Insight 360 platform. I think you had that page up. That's the slide right after this. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Insight 360? What is the platform? What was the vision when you wanted to create it? Give us the little taste of that journey.
Sure. I think it's an exciting story from many aspects, but the driver behind it was enabling the business and kind of unifying the metrics which drive the business. So everyone's singing from the same song sheet. People are representing things consistently to clients or within internal meetings. So performance of our business lines was the primary goal. And then seeing it across business lines creates a challenge of how do you have one solution that adapts to these different scenarios. And lastly, when you're building with Qlik View, you can kind of really fine tune what you're seeing, but it's a lot of dashboards that you can chain them, but not really organize them as a platform. Similarly with QlikSense, you don't have that guided experience. You have a lot more openness. So we adopted a mashup approach. And so what you're going to see is really a number of Qlik apps under the covers integrated with Qlik as a data platform. And so those drivers really enabling the business in a seamless way across disparate scenarios has been very successful.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that you were able to pull something like this off for an organization as large as KPMG, because you have all those businesses and bringing it all together on one dashboard. Well, I guess you don't even call this a dashboard, right? It's an information universe. I think that's really great. And I know you work very closely with Matt. So I'm actually going to bring Matt into the show at this point. Hello, Matt.
Hi, Kate.
Welcome to the show. Maybe we can start with a little bit of an introduction. Matt, what do you do and how did you end up working with Mark at KPMG?
Sure. So my role at Qlik is I lead the professional services team in the Americas. I've been in the professional services industry probably 21 years at this point. And with Qlik, I guess I would say I get to spend my days working with a team of extremely talented, creative professionals who kind of get out of bed every morning interested in helping customers solve really complex problems. So, it's probably one of the best jobs that you could ask for.
That's great. Do you work with every kind of industry, or do you specifically focus on, consulting companies? What's your focus area?
So being part of a company like Qlik gives you the ability to really be focused on industries, all industries, all different verticals and functional areas. So we specialize in our technology. We specialize in helping customers get insight out of their data. And we do have, areas of industry expertise as well. But I think the primary goal for us is to be able to support all of our customers across all industries.
Okay, great. And speaking of customers, let's talk about your involvement with building Insight 360.
Sure. So I'm going to preface this just by saying, a lot of people from the professional services team involved in helping out here. So I'm going to speak in terms of we. But when KPMG came to us, they had some very lofty goals for creating this platform that was going to draw people in, standardize all the metrics across their business, and they had a very strong belief that they understood how they could represent that information to their users best. And so what we did is we started by partnering with KPMG to really look at how can our technology support their vision, right? So what good is a product if you ultimately can't achieve your goals as a business? And so really the journey began from that partnership, looking at what is KPMG looking to do and how do we support that with our technology. Some of the things that they're looking to do that we'll go through in some of Mark's demos are areas where they wanted to be able to represent information in ways that were maybe a little bit out of the ordinary for what the product is capable of. And so looking at how we help build that product together, using the strengths of both the KPMG team and the Qlik team together to come up with that solution.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is and I saw the demo earlier today. I think it's a very good example of thinking outside of the out-of-the-box approach that Qlik provides and working together with yourself and Rob, who I'm actually going to bring in. Rob Wunderlich, hello, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Now we're all here. So Rob, before we get into Mark's demo, can you please provide an introduction and tell us what your involvement was with Insight 360?
Sure. So my name is Rob Wunderlich. So I've been a Qlik consultant since 2006. I've been using Qlik. Prior to that, I worked with the SaaS product in business intelligence, and also a number of other roles as a software development manager and programmer. So I came to KPMG with WebC. So at WebC, we specialize in helping customers develop custom analytic applications on top of the Qlik platform. And to do that, we can either create the application for you, augment your staff, and we also provide a full range of training in Qlik and web technologies, and importantly, how to stitch those two together. So Mark reached out to us because he had already developed this, started developing this application, had a great team at KPMG working on it, talented team of programmers, but he had some performance issues and some questions. So he reached out to us, and my partner Nick and I came on site for a week. We did some analysis of their application, made some recommendations, and I delivered, I think it was 3 days of education about using the Qlik APIs and stitch that together with our recommendations and our findings for that application. So that was my role.
Thank you. And I know, Mark, you're going to get into the APIs during your demo, but before we get into the demo, Rob, I want to ask about the hat. We had some comments about the hat. So do you want to tell people how you got to be known as the guy with the hat?
So the hat is just an accident. It was like over 20 years ago. That photo was taken with the hat. I was sitting on a curb in Guatemala when I came out from my hotel and realized that my rental car had disappeared. And people who know me, I'm a fairly calm person, so that was just my look of resignation and, oh, what the heck. So when the Qlik community started up, again, so this was maybe a dozen years or so ago, they wanted us to upload an avatar. And my wife said, oh, that's a nice photo of you. I didn't really have a good photo. So I uploaded it, and then it just became legend. People recognized me with the hat. I became known as the man in the hat. I think I told the story with you earlier. I can go to a conference and put the hat on, and people come up to me and share their stories, and I take the hat off, and I'm absolutely anonymous. So it's become synonymous with my business with Qlik.
Hey, awesome. Thank you for that. So, Mark, I think this is a good time for us to get into the demo. And just one thing for Matt and Rob, definitely jump in and discuss some of the, the challenges and what you think went wrong, what you think went right during this whole journey, because I would love to hear from all of you. But Mark, if you want to start kicking things off, you've got the screen share up.
Okay. So first, just to cue it up. And by the way, Rob, if I want to think about Frank Sinatra's hat back there, give you a more sinister look. Okay. So user demographics. So this kind of, supporting the theme of the broad audience. And because we have Qlik APIs, and this is something Matt sold us on, is using a mashup versus out of the box. We have programmatic control, and we can create seamless adaptive behavior. Secondly, what's important is the audience. We're enabling, when you enable someone who's doing day-to-day data grinding, you get so much return. When you enable decision makers, that exponentially increases. So they can speak to clients and they're informed, and they can get those insights that help find efficiencies that improve our profitability. And that's where you really get value from the product. So that's been the target of Insight 360. And just to give a little taste of the functional capabilities, so the adoptive behavior, we have within one page different hats, speaking of hats, that a user can wear: leadership, the group I run, portfolio, what are the deals I'm working on, my accounts, how am I doing with engagement for my clients. And similarly, leveraging the APIs, we have one object here, this tree map, a great tool, people love it for drilling in. And we have hierarchies around our business areas and services and industries. And then you're changing dimensions and even measures, but it's one object, and the APIs allow you to swap between them. I'm sorry, so that's that. I don't know if any points here you wanted to dive into. I'm happy to just keep plowing forward.
Yeah, I mean, I personally love the dynamic dimension and measure switching. I think it's super useful to executives because they're not going to start learning how to use self-service BI. And I just think that was a really cool feature where they can actually switch the dimensions and measures. We do have a couple of comments from the audience. They're mostly about the hat, Rob. So Jillian says this is true. She can't remember what it's called, but she calls it the Croc Dundee hat. That was interesting. We had a comment here from Rudain saying, well said, the right information at the right time at the right hands. And I completely agree. It's not only about building the best looking data visualization or dashboard, it's about having the right data be available at the right time and seen by the right individuals who can make the decisions or be data informed to make decisions.
And I would like to comment on the value of those different lenses. I can look at this through what's my entitlements to my leadership. I can look at it from the customer perspective. I can look at it from the perspective of my team. So sharing the same underlying data and having the same metrics, but rolling them up differently, not only for different people, but the same person can approach that data from that different lens. I think that's really valuable and unique.
Yeah, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention the whole army behind this. Some of the things we're looking at, we have a web development magician, Imran, who put a lot of this stuff into repeatable patterns. So we're able to mass produce the capability you're seeing.
Yeah, there's
one of the things I think that's really interesting about those views is just how not only do you have the ability to switch between, all of those dynamic dimensions, but it's very customized for your role or for your function. So when you're coming in, you're actually getting a very specific experience that gets you the information that's most valuable to you and what you're doing at that point in time.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, Mark, you have something to demo on that. Just a quick question here from the audience, from Aditi. She's asking if there's a demo available of Insight 360 online, but this is, just to clarify, this is a platform that's KPMG specific. It's for KPMG. It's an internal system, so you can't really check it out. But I think you can learn a lot of, what to do, what not to do if you're implementing this for your own organization.
Right, right.
So I'm going to go ahead and put your screen back up.
Okay, so Matt brought up the idea of team, and I think one thing, we talk about Qlik as a platform versus, point solutions. It's also allowed us to create an ecosystem of technology, starting from our sourcing through QVD layer, our data models, our charting layer, and then the web layer on top of that. And we're starting to, add in some end printing so people can take their screen results on the road with them. And this has allowed us to really democratize development. Having a large team is the only way to build something of this scale. And having the platform partitioned and people with specialized roles. I mean, I want everyone to understand all the layers, how they piece together. But if I need throughput, I have to get 3 or 4 people working on the same project at the same time. You can't do that with native just dashboards.
Sorry, I want to meet some sirens, but there was a question here. So Tankut is saying the problem is users know how to read the data, right? So maybe you could talk a little bit about user adoption and what you had to go through to make sure that those 10,000 or so individuals actually know what they're looking at when they look at those charts and graphs.
Great question. And, a lot of pages, even as much as we try and create something intuitive and understandable, it requires explanation. So there is a page with a KPI catalog. We also have layered help text, which I'll show in another slide, that we can use the APIs to have modal windows appear showing the definitions behind what you're looking at. Is that kind of the gist of the question there?
Yeah, I think so. And I think you had a slide in here that showed where you can hover to get more information about the content that people are viewing, right? Kind of
Exactly. Yeah, and I think adoption is an organizational challenge, not a technical one. We're lucky, and the groundwork here is coming from the top down, and the sponsorship and have leaders of the firm having skin in the game here. They're promoting it. So an email from one of the partners is going to be much better than us building something state of the art that no other firm has. Just that email promoting it is going to get people to actually use it.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
Good. I was going to point out that some of the interesting mashups. This mashup here tends to use some native objects as well as I think some custom visualization. But I've seen some interesting customer mashups where they're using just native Qlik objects, but they want to wrapper them with help and other context.
Right.
So the context of the charts are really coming from Qlik, but they want to have that more guided experience, help being one of those.
Right.
Yeah, Mark, you mentioned that this came from the top down, and I'm just curious if there wasn't a supporter at the top, do you think you'd be able to pull this off?
Yeah, great question. I think about that phrase, if you build it, they will come. It's not true. And I think of it as if they come, you better damn well build it, because it's a great opportunity. And it coming from the top is, I think, a prerequisite. It's not something that's helpful. It's required. And as Matt said before, that's what happened here in this story.
And I think when I look at the customers who take something on like this, that's this scale, an inclusive environment that's not saying it's an IT project, it's not a specific line of business project, but that it's, it's an organizational kind of initiative, and that everyone is supportive of that, really leads to success in almost all instances that I've seen. And there's, a lot of support across the entire KPMG business for this. So I think that's important, and it shows in the resulting product.
Absolutely. So, Mark, at this point, I'll put your screen back up so you can continue showing us your stuff and let's see the demo of the platform.
Sure. So when I started my career, I was writing 3GL programs to create reports, and after the third report, I said, well, this is pretty repetitive. So I built toolkits, and that's allowed our team to be more productive. So having metadata that we either interpret or generate code from has helped us increase our consistency, time to market, and reduce complexity. So that's another aspect, particularly the mashup APIs, that they can read metadata versus having things hard-coded and redundant. And we'll see more of that. And this last slide, before I go into some screen sharing of the app, is our journey on performance. And all the ingredients we talked about are important for a leader. They don't want to wait 15 seconds for a page to open. And with a complex Qlik app, that can be a challenge. So we went through this with a lot of angles and got from the brink of failure to acceptable, and now we're converging on optimal.
Mm-hmm.
It's still always a day-to-day challenge with something this large. And I'll tell you, the biggest breakthrough was this drop in this green line. This app was 20-something seconds. And it was part of a larger app. And we had one-size-fits-all data model and one-size-fits-all QlikSense app.
Mm-hmm.
And when we looked at that page in isolation, said, hey, that's only really 10% of the overall data. And we put it in a separate app and had the mashup dynamically switch to that app, and voila, we got to 3 seconds. And so that became our biggest recipe for performance improvement. And I'll go into more detail on that later.
Yeah, I think I love this chart. So for those who maybe if the screen is small for you, if you can't make sense of it, basically the axis is the number of seconds it takes for a page to load, and then all those different lines, they are different apps, right, Mark? That sit inside that.
Exactly, different pages within i360.
Yes, and you were able to get all of those different pages down to below, is that 10 seconds, under 10 seconds load time?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we still face challenges because even though the averages are acceptable, if you go further west from our data center, there's network latency. And we're attacking that from a few angles, but it's still something not fully there.
Yeah, we've got a comment here from Laura that says that she loves the comment where you said adoption is an organization challenge, not a technical one, but it is essential to technical success. Very true.
Yeah, and I've been lucky, in this case, and the experience at Goldman, to have that sponsorship. Okay.
Yeah, if you don't mind, we've got another question here from Armando. I think this would be interesting. So how do you present the cost benefit of a Qlik project like this? And is also asking what you think about QlikSense not being free. I didn't even know there was an update to that. But what are your thoughts? How do you justify the cost benefit?
So I'll let Matt answer the second question. But on the first question, I'm remembering a conversation I had with Paul Van Secklin when I was bringing Qlik into Barclays. And they wanted slides. So I did some slides on ROI.
Okay.
And there's a operational ROI for repetitive tasks. It might take me 2 weeks of effort to produce 1 week management summary versus 3 months of effort so they can click every day and see that same summary and more real time. and we can measure that return mathematically. The return from someone saying, hey, there's an inefficiency in my financial services in the Midwest, whereas I'm doing really well with that in the Northeast, and drill into that and see why. And maybe it's a staffing issue. And then that change, it's immeasurable what that can do for a business. So the insight, the return on insight versus just the operational improvement is hard to quantify.
Mark, is that something you would say that return on insight is just something that gets reinforced by experience? In other words, if you can deliver that and people can experience it, then they will sponsor building out more capability for those insights?
Yeah, partly, and then also having stakeholders with skin in the game and belief in the capability. So I think, you know, we're the suppliers, but it's only half of the equation on an insight. An insight requires a user.
It gets really hard when you want to quantify the decisions that you've been able to make as a result of the analytics that you have and the impact to the business in respect to a project. But I mean, that is ultimately what you're driving toward, right? With a project like this is what better decisions are you able to make? How are you able to improve the business? And then ultimately that has value, but it doesn't always get, you know, brought into a cost benefit analysis equation.
Yeah, I think it's hard to quantify the fact that you made a data-driven decision, but I think what's really easy to quantify is the number of manpower hours that it would take you to put together, let's say, dashboard slides or Excel spreadsheets, that I think you can quantify.
Yep.
I think what's important.
I was going to say, from a project development perspective, I think this is where sort of an agile, iterative approach versus a waterfall. Like if you want to approach something like KPMG is doing, you know, I'd really recommend starting small, delivering to the stakeholders, getting that feedback loop, because some of that is going to be sort of experiential versus being able to measure it.
Yeah. Another ingredient is to analyze your usage, and I have a slide on that. So we spend all this investment because someone asked for something, but looking at usage, you know, the adoption may not be as healthy as we thought, and so we have to go back to the stakeholders and say, hey, help us get this into the mainstream. Okay. So right, this slide is talking about the menu in i360. So behind each menu item is a page. And behind each page typically is a different Qlik Sense application that the mashup opens. And the ones I see, and I've got every role in the book here, are based on the roles I have and how those roles are associated to application pages. And so that's how the menu is drawn based on the user roles, and also how pages are integrated into the app. So to me, I find this very powerful if we build a new app to be able to dynamically slot it in, and it appears based on your roles.
Yeah, that's really cool. So depending on your level in the organization or the specific things you need to look at, when you log in, you basically see a different layout, right?
Yes, that's right. And so that brings us to the next slide. So I run as myself by default. I'm the OS user, Mark Diorio, but I want to see what a business leader is seeing. So I can impersonate him. So we have this 3-layer, and I'll talk about the 3rd layer in a second, but user data structure. So as a super user, I have one-to-many relationship with run as. I can pick, in this case, D.D. Owens, who can see all of government as his leadership view. And then he has a 3rd layer where he can look at his deals, but also the deals of people under him. So in this case, he's looking at one of his counselees, people who report to him, and seeing their deals. So, you know, quite a lot of different lenses, and this structure, we use it to great effect. Okay, so this is the application splitting, and I guess I'll fast forward to the actual application. We've been looking at a leadership view, portfolio view, and MPP view. And you can see below what's happening under the covers. Same visuals, same charts, same expressions, different apps. So we went from FS leadership to FS portfolio.
And Mark, why was the application splitting important?
Yeah, so going back to that performance diagram, when you saw the, I don't know, 90% improvement in that one app by splitting it out. So just by taking these mega one-size-fits-all apps and carving them up into smaller ones on some basis, like in this case, the view, then we're able to make them, each app, more performant.
Okay, got it.
And so that goes back to this drawing here. Well, how do I manage 3 copies of the same charts? So I have my financial strength work in progress. That's where I develop just one master. And then I'll publish it to 3 different published apps, different names, different app IDs, and they're loaded from different models. This is what I wanted to show you, Rob. And then have the mashup under the covers simply switch the app ID when you switch views.
All right. Rob, thoughts?
It's a great approach. It's called document chaining or telescoping in some ways. It's a fantastic approach. It's really solved this problem. So, Mark, is there no duplication of the fact data then between these models?
Yes, good question. So what we do is we have a common model, and again, we clone it, but then there are additional load scripts. So there's a model that binaries from another model, and then a bunch of drop statements or effective deletes on the fact data. So we only remain with what's relevant. So what might have started at, I don't know, 500 MB is now 200 MB.
Yeah, it's a brilliant approach. And we discussed it a little bit before, but to kind of point it out to people, in many cases, looking at a particular web page, you may be using anywhere from 1 to many of these apps to generate, correct? So it's very dynamic and on demand.
Yeah. Yeah, the other problem that brings about is how do you make it seamless? If I make a selection, for example, choose Houston as a market hub, and then I go to my portfolio view, and I still want to be windowed onto Houston. And so we've built selection passing through metadata. So common fields between the apps are known by the mashup. And as it makes that application switch, it also copies the selections or applies the selections between them. So it's not only a behavior we have within the same page when we're switching apps, but between pages. So if I went from this page to, let's say, the account management page, and I have common fields, I will apply the selections all throughout Insight 360. We use this.
Yeah, I can see that being really helpful if I'm in charge of a specific region and I want to see the different pages. And I don't want to use the filter every single time I flip a page. I can see that being really a good time saver.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of the glue that makes when you zeroed in on a phrase, information universe. So looking at, the macro of all the subject areas you care about, but being able to unify them in one session.
And Mark, to clarify, this application splitting is purely a back-end technical requirement. It has, the users are totally unaware of it.
Totally unaware, yeah.
The less they know, the better, right?
Yeah, we don't want to make their head spin.
Yes.
Okay. So then drilling into a single object, another practical but valuable aspect of Mashup is we can enrich our charts. So you can see on the top right, Imran's built these buttons. And again, these are pattern things, so we can mass produce this. So we have an info button, which, to answer the earlier question, is a layer of guidance that we can put on each object, describing what you're looking at. We had this extension that someone on Matt's team built, Dan Mazarski, brilliant, where we clone an object, and the clone version is in an alternate state, so I can independently work with it and compare it from, say, different regions or different angles on the data. So very powerful capability.
Yeah, that's like the comparison. That looks really cool.
Yeah. With every object, we have a table view if you just want to look at the numbers. And then, unfortunately, everyone's favorite, sent to Excel.
You've got to export to Excel, Mark. I mean, you just have to. Sometimes it has to be done. So I'm glad you have that feature.
And then I couldn't help but, throw in a plug for my friends at VizLib, exploiting their KPI designer, which I think in some ways it's like a mini dashboard. And it has allowed us, in this case, we mirrored a slide that the partners were used to seeing, but now it's interactive. And that familiarity, and you and I, Kate, talked about visual, the power of good principles on design. And so I think, that's helped with adoption.
So one of the things I just wanted to highlight, Mark, you showed a lot with, the object enrichment and the kind of additional functionality that you can add. So it can sound kind of complicated, right? But what the team did is they spent a lot of time in creating a reusable framework. So a configuration-driven capability. So when you add objects, you can expose these capabilities on virtually anything. So doing comparative analytics, like Mark showed, going into a table that has more context than the original chart might have. So exporting to Excel. A lot of these capabilities are part of, once again, a configuration-driven mashup. So it's not you're not coding this on each object.
So I'm just looking at some of the comments. You have Joe Worthington here from VizLib saying, thanks Mark, KPI designer. I thought this was funny from David saying that Joe Worthington, I guess, squealed at the mention. So
good. Well, tell them we're going to be approaching them for discounts then.
Oh, perfect. Just another question, comment here from Yogi saying multiple applications feeding to a single mashup with selection pass-through between apps. So most pages merging multiple applications together seamlessly, many using VizLib objects as well as in-house extensions, mashup extensions, and VizLib. So team, wow, well done. I guess that's just a kudos to you guys.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's your.
And I'm so glad we're able to do this. I think, for these things to become more mainstream will really, unleash a lot of capability in the platform across all the community here.
Yeah.
Okay. Next thing came about as an accident. See, Imran was looking at a way to troubleshoot our objects. And he built a listing based on metadata about the objects. We don't hard code object IDs on our mashup for the most part. We have a lineage table, which has a business name for that object. So if we have to swap out a different object ID, we don't have to change the mashup code. We change the lineage to it. And so we took that lineage and put a lookup on it. And Imran's built this capability where you can create your own dashboard from our pre-created charts. And you can see I'm hovered over one chart here and I see the image. We also have an image library with each object. And so I built this page on the fly in a matter of 20 seconds by clicking from my palette of pre-created objects. Now, this could be useful. Let's say a user is looking at their pipeline and engagement and having to bounce between pages and take notes, and they just want to see things side by side, or bookings in pipeline. And there's correlations there that they might be missing. So they can bring it together in an ad hoc basis. One would say, well, you could do that with ClickSense and a model. Yeah, but I don't see a partner learning that. Whereas coming here and choosing from a menu is certainly much more guided.
Yeah, I think that's really wonderful. So if a partner has a question, they don't have to call up the data folks to, hey, can you add these 2 more charts? That obviously is going to take the data person some time to go ahead and build that for them, send it back if the partner is not willing to or doesn't have the time to dedicate to learning ClickSense. I think that's a really great option.
Yeah. So I think this has so much potential to blow off the doors here. Then you can save them, share them, and pull them up on demand. So it's kind of
That's really fascinating. I think once you're used to the paradigms that are part of i360, to your point, Mark, going and learning something, kind of learning ClickSense on its own maybe is totally outside your kind of experience. So bringing it in here makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And we could drag and drop measures. That's been done since forever with ClickView. But dragging and dropping charts, I think is pretty cool. You have that with master visualizations, but again, there's kind of a training hurdle to get there.
And then can they save this dashboard for themselves that they wanted, this guided self-service dashboard that they built?
Yeah, I can save it and share it.
Okay.
So very potential stuff. So I'm coming towards the end, I think, of slides. Let me get to the next one here. One more is native integration. So if you're building something native ClickSense, you want to bring it into i360, no problem. We can add it to the menu through our metadata. It shows there because you have the role associated with it. But within this iframe, you can see is native Qlik. And another shout out to our VisLib Climate friends. This is the P&L custom P&L report.
Yeah, Mark, before you go on, I wanted to ask, so what if, let's say a partner comes to you guys and says, I want to see this new dashboard, some other data points that she wanted to see together, and they can't use that self-guided dashboard for one reason or another. Maybe their field's missing. You guys take requests, or I'm assuming this is a living, breathing dashboard where you're going to continuously add and basically improve on it. So what's your approach there?
Yes, very much part of why we continue to grow and evolve is exactly what you said there, Kate. And so the framework is built in an extensible way. We are well rehearsed in getting the data source, putting a model and the charts on top of it. And while we're doing that, also working with the sponsor on how they want to use it. Example is we're talking with folks about enabling the organization to go back to work because of COVID. And we had some ideas, but what really helped them is for us building prototypes. So we do a lot of that as well, showing people what's possible, because we know the whole palette of what Qlik can do, whereas they know they just want some automation on information delivery.
Thank you. Going back to your slide. Please carry on.
Okay. All right, then this last slide is about usage, without going into too much detail. But this helps us not only with adoption. I can look at our performance trends. I can look at new apps, make sure they're getting used, get insights on who the user population is. We have pretty good penetration advisory. With audit, it tends to ebb and flow, and understanding that is important. And then we have, all these other looks at pages and performance by office, transaction details showing me who's using the new COVID app. So this is kind of look at the performance of the FS model split by view, so I can see that. We've recently been looking at bandwidth because that has caused a spike in our performance that hasn't been good. And you could see in April, that number went up because everybody's working at home. And so we're suffering because of the VPN.
A question here. I know when people build something like this, they tend to have assumptions of the usage or user adoption. Did the actual usage of this tool meet your expectations or exceed your expectations?
Great question. It's never enough. We're very satisfied we've got this level of penetration. We think Insight 360 is a household name in the firm, and we can build on that. There's kind of a brand recognition to it. That said, as much as we're adoptive and try to have one solution satisfy everyone, there are pockets where people, it's not quite meeting their needs, and they find other things. And we have to really get our finger on that and try and be proactive in educating people, and also hearing from them as to what they want and adopting to it.
Got it. All right. Any more slides before I remove your screen? I just want to confirm.
Just some feedback I've kept in my memoirs folder here. So this is some nice comments and just a handful. What's pleasing is that we're making people's lives easier. And as technologists, we have to remember these guys are paying bills here, and enabling them is why we're here. At least in a business like KPMG.
Well, you're getting some more feedback here. We've got somebody who said this is beautiful. We have Seppi saying your dashboards rock, and happy to see this.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. So I do have a question for the group, right? So what advice would you have for other organizations that are trying to implement a similar solution to enable their users to become more data-driven?
I'll tackle that. So I think it starts with a good inventory of what you have, what skills you have, learning from others, what they can do and setting your goals. And then again, I think it's a matter of making sure that you have the feedback loop, you have the sponsorship, but you're also constantly engaged, as Mark said, with the people who pay the bills, that this technology serves the business, and being constantly reminded of that, not getting attached to your design, but constantly reacting to the feedback from the organization as to what's valuable and what's not, and taking that as your direction. I'd also suggest that some of these are pretty broad. I don't know if off the top of his head Mark could say, but this is a large project, involved a lot of people, a lot of hours. So I'd say, be realistic about what it's going to take, make that commitment, make sure that you see or prove the benefits as you go along, and adjust, and reach out, fill in your gaps on your team, augment when necessary, seek out the right education and the right toolkits, the right skills.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a great example of pulling in the right level of support and help when you need it. You're working as a team.
People ask me is how my music background has helped, and I'll tell you a funny anecdote is I think running rock bands has helped me run teams and run projects like this, because I dealt with a lot of temperamental egomaniacs with different agendas. And I think, corralling that into, everyone marching in the same direction is a big challenge. It's not a technical challenge, and working through that and coming up with something successful takes a lot of skills, communication skills, and business understanding.
Yeah. So I know you discussed a couple of the challenges that you faced in building this, but I'm wondering if you had to face any issues with data quality coming from, I guess, so many different sources, right, and getting all of that together. If you could just take a minute and talk about that, how you address that challenge.
I could take more than a minute on that.
We're time boxing you, Mark.
We had a recent project where we're replicating a legacy system and the metrics aren't tying out. And validating them by hand is very time consuming. And so we built automation using Qlik. You can validate what you're showing in Qlik. You take your detail source, you take your result, and you put them side by side in tables showing variances. So we can use the platform to help with exactly that challenge, is data quality.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, we've got one comment here from Joe just saying, Rob, the man with a hat. Rob, you're getting most of the comments here, so because of your hat.
I need to put a hat on.
Yeah, get some.
You got your hat. That's too funny. So, guys, I know we have a few minutes left of the session. I just wanted to thank you all for joining this session. And before we wrap up, maybe just tell everybody where they can go to learn more about the work you're doing, and if you wanted to continue this conversation, where's the best place to reach you? So maybe we can start with Mark, and then Rob and Matt.
Well, again, I really appreciate the opportunity to present this. I think it's got food for thought. One of the slides has a bullet, leverage the Qlik ecosystem. And that's what I've done. When I started, I became hands-on, which helps me run the team. And because I've learned to love Qlik and going through the community to solve a problem, and posts from Rob or other brilliant folks on the community, it's such a great resource. So I think if what you've seen interests you, all the information is out there. You just go hunting for it.
Thank you. Rob?
Yeah, so if you want to learn more about our work at WebC and what we have to offer, you can go to webc.io and you'll find out about our consulting services, as well as our full range of education options, including our self-study or self-paced study, WebC.academy. You can also go to my website, qlikviewcookbook.com, which I've been publishing since 2008 for my personal blog and lots of tips and tools, as well as the Qlik community. So the Qlik community is another great place to find us all.
Perfect. Thanks, Rob. And Matt?
I guess I would draw people to Qlik.com. Look at the technology. It's very accessible. Don't shy away from kind of experimenting with it. And you'll find a lot of information there about the kind of the professional services that Qlik can offer if you want to work with us. Access to the community. There's a very vibrant community out there, a lot of expertise available to support you. Mark did a great job with kind of reaching out as he needed for expertise, and I think it led to what you saw today and a lot of the success that he and his team have had.
Perfect, thank you. And just one last thing I'll mention, you guys had Qlik World about 2 weeks ago, so there's a site here in the ticker. You go.qlik.com/QlikWorld-online for recordings of Qlik World 2020 that you can go and check out. So thank you all for joining this session, and thank you guys for being guests on the show. I wish you a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.